Hello, welcome to the Boston Herald video podcast. My name is Harold Lapidus. My very special guest today is singer-songwriter, musician Gregg Sutton. Gregg has had a very long, diverse, and illustrious career. He's written songs for dozens of people, including the hits Stop for Sam Brown and Jamelia, Tonight for Joe Cocker, and You're All That Matters to Me for Curtis Stigers, as well as songs for Tom Jones, Al Green, Eric Burden, Dolly Parton, Jeff Healey, Percy Sledge, and many others. He was also a member of the what would now be called an Americana band, Lone Justice, from 1985 to 87. His work can be heard in movies and on television programs. He's very active on Facebook, performing weekly online Salvation Sunday streaming concerts. And he's also written a memoir titled Here's Your Hat, What's Your Hurry, which is available directly from Gregg on his Facebook page. And he also has a couple of albums out, which you can find on Bandcamp. And the catalyst for inviting Mr. Sutton to appear on this podcast was because recently, the 16th volume of Bob Dylan's bootleg series,
Springtime in New York.
Yeah, was released covering Dylan's work from 1980 to 1985, and a previously unreleased live track from Dylan's 1984 European tour, a fun little rocker titled Enough Is Enough opens disc 5, and as the basis for that tour, it can be heard on that, as well as on the underrated 1984 live document, Real Live, on vinyl. Which we'll hopefully talk about later. So welcome, Mr. Sutton, to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Harold. It's nice to be here. It's a beautiful morning in California.
That's good. It's a beautiful morning here in Massachusetts.
Well, that's very good too.
So you have a new Chihuahua?
Yeah, I do. His name is Harry Barrett, and I was he turned out, it's great. It's great to have a little dog, again. I've had dogs all my life, so So
one of the things the first things I want to ask you about was on a recent Salvation Sunday Facebook online concert. First of all, who are the band members that are playing with you?
The band members are Paul Lax, who has a group called I See Hawks in LA, and was also a member of the Bone Daddies. Mike Temple, who's I know as Tempo. Who is the leader of the Bone Daddies and, plays for several people. And a guy named Rick Morris plays bass, and he's very active. He plays with all kinds of high-class musicians, James Gadsden, and he was also, I think, a Bone Daddy at one time. He's really, when he comes here, he's slumming musically, but, that's, my stuff is simple compared to James Gadsden material.
You play guitar, you play bass. Obviously, you play bass, Bob Dylan. And on this episode, a couple episodes ago, you played a lot of keyboards. And when you were talking, you're talking about how you were you say, "I think I know how this goes." You're kind of faking it. You have a band playing. And I kind of know what's going on, but I've never actually asked anyone about this. So what is actually going on when you're playing, you're coming up with a song, you kind of know it, and you have a band playing it? There's a certain...
Well, here, what happened that day was I usually play about 3 or 4 songs on keyboard, maybe at the most, 'cause I'm not really a keyboard player, but it's the first instrument I ever played. And I love the piano, and my right hand's okay. My left hand is the worst, but I realized that I don't have to use my left hand with the band. So that's it. But anyway, I broke a string that day. And rather than go upstairs and find my Martin guitar and bring it down, which I think I eventually did, I just, said, well, let's do this song. And, I play my songs on piano and keyboard. So, but I wasn't planning on it. I usually write a set list that I don't stick to. But that was like, I just said, okay, well, here's this song. I think I can play this song. So, it's like, there's no guarantees with the keyboard. Sometimes I make horrible mistakes, and, but it's fun. And, I get to set the rules. So.
So, Gregg played with Bob Dylan for a few months back in 1984, including an entire European tour. But after doing a lot of research, it's almost the least interesting thing you've ever done. You've had such a illustrious career doing so many things. And so let's forget about Bob Dylan for a moment, because
I still think that was the best band I was ever in. Yeah. I mean, not only was I playing and talking to the guy who changed my life the most musically, but my favorite guitar player in the world is Mick Taylor. And there he was, like if I ever got bored, like listening to Bob, which I never did, but Mick played like lots of solos. And then there was Ian McLagan, another Rolling Stone, and Colin Allen, who was a blues breaker. So that was a great band. I don't understand why that record is not more, I don't know, not popular, but more revered than it is, because there's shit on it that's just great.
Well, we'll get to that. I have a whole list of questions. Yeah, I agree with you. I listened to it when I was doing a preparation for the box set coming out, and it is brilliant, and I don't know why it's underrated. But one of the things I want to talk to you in particular, and I'm very excited to talk to you about, is your friendship with the late great Andy Kaufman, who is just one of the great, brilliant. Again, he doesn't really refer to himself as a comedian, but he was
a very funny man. I mean, he was, he did something that no other comedian did. And I still meet people who say, well, I say, yeah, Kaufman was like my best friend. And they say, well, he wasn't funny, and that's exactly what Andy would want. So, he was I've worked with two geniuses in my life, Bob and Andy, who I would say without a doubt are geniuses, who changed the rules, very brave.
I totally agree. I rewatched the Carnegie Hall special, the Showtime special from '79. And you were the musical director there. And so were you the guy who would be raising your hand up and down? Do you have a baton? I was.
Yeah, in fact, it was the first time and only time that I ever was a conductor. I wrote the charts, and I sort of hummed them to a guy who took it down for me, and then we harmonized and everything. And, I thought I would be the bass player or something, but Andy said, look, I want you to, you'll look better if you're the conductor. So, and I had this all-star band, Ronnie Cooper and Louis Soloff on the horns, and just amazing. So I said to them, look, here's the charts. I've never been a conductor before. So I'll give you the cues on stops and everything, but don't pay any attention to my waving my thing around, because it might, you guys are used to it. I have no idea what I'm doing. So, they liked me for that. And, it was just a great gig, just, once in a lifetime experience.
And you appeared in the Man on the Moon biopic, and
playing myself.
So what did you think about the movie?
I thought the movie was okay. I thought Jim Carrey really tried. I mean, Jim Carrey had the outside of Andy completely. I mean, Jim Carrey can imitate anybody, and he was a great guy. He would say to me every once in a while, he'd break character, and he said, he'd say let me know if I should do something different, because he knew that I knew Andy my entire life, so, and he was very cool that way. But I thought the movie, there was some stuff in it that never happened. And, midway through the movie, Danny DeVito tried to take over as director from his friend, Milos Forman, who's, a brilliant director. And I thought that hurt the movie a little bit. I thought Milos stopped caring after a while. He would just sit back by his video banks from what, I didn't see the whole shooting go down, just what I was involved in. He would just sit back at the video banks rather than close to the stage. And at first he was. In fact, I wanted so badly to talk to Milos, that I dropped my baton on purpose. And he came over to me and said, "Mr. Conductor, try to hold on to your baton." I said, "Well, thank you, Milos. It won't happen again." Just, because Milos made One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and some other great. Yeah, just the greatest.
So I'm from Long Island as well. So you want to talk about how Andy? You guys bonded?
Well, I met Andy we went to Baker Hill School together, which was right up the street from my house in Great Neck before we moved back to New York City. And in the 10th grade, Olatunji came and did a concert. And I know that was the day that Andy and I were like sitting in the first row, and we were the only two kids who were like really excited by this, and I know that was the day he started his fascination with conga drums. That had a big effect on his life. And after the show, in the auditorium, we were sitting next to each other and we were both like excited about it. And, so we sort of made friends, and then we started talking about Elvis. And, we were both huge Elvis fans. And I think, by that time, it was 1959. Elvis was in the movies. Most fourth graders didn't really care about music, and so we really bonded over the fact that we were Elvis fans, and we remained really close friends the rest of our lives. I mean, when I was out of the blue, he showed up at my house in New York one night, and he said, "Hi, it's me, it's Andy." And I said, "Wow, my cousin Glenn also knew Andy." So he came down and we started hanging out, and he said, "You really should come out to Great Neck, blah, blah, blah." So we did, and we started hanging out with another two friends, and we had a little group that we called F Troop, because there was a show on on TV, a bad situation comedy called F Troop. But we were like, very radical kids, and we'd take acid together and, walk around New York. And like when we were 16, Andy used to go to Hubert's Museum, which was a freak museum on 42nd Street, when 42nd Street was like a honky tonk, in New York, Times Square area, and like that. And I remember he was like a regular there. I remember going there with him, and they say, "Oh, hi, Andy, you back again?" Hubert's had like, real free, it was a freak show, so, but Andy would say to me, "Greg, on the streets of New York, you can be anybody you want to be. Watch this." And he'd start like going, go up to people like that, and, saying, "Hey, will you hug me?" Get the fuck away from me. But he said, "See, you can be anybody. They don't know who you are, So Andy was already doing Andy, very early. I mean, we were teenagers, 15, 16. And he was already, rehearsing his act in front of the invisible camera in his bedroom. And, so, and then later on, he moved to California. I moved to California. And, I had a little career going. I had a record deal with CBS and blah, 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 powerful management. And, and he said, he'd say to me, he came out and, he got a part on, he was doing like, before he got his part on Taxi, he was doing, I go to the Improv to see him, and the Comedy Store, he'd do like open mic nights, and he was becoming a sensation, and he was just the funniest guy I've ever seen, and he said to me, "Look, I need a band." and I know that you're like, maybe above my level. I said, well, we got that wrong, but I'll be happy to do it. And believe me, Andy, it'll be the best band you ever had, because we'll do the Elvis shit the way you're supposed to play the Elvis shit, So, from that point on, I was his musical director, and, I worked for him cheap because he was my friend. And, we went all over, it was just great. I really miss him a lot. He died when I was on tour with Bob.
Oh.
And I saw him right before that, I think in February. And that was, it was like a live wake. Robin Williams was there, I was there, Zamuda was there, his manager, George Shapiro, was there, and he was already bald. And some people think that he faked his death, but I know he didn't, because I would have heard from him by now, So, let me just close this window, Harold. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
They're building a fucking medical building, like three houses down. And it's like jackhammers in my living room.
Yeah.
So I wake up in a bad mood every day.
I saw an unauthorized documentary about Andy, and one of the takeaways from that was said, and maybe you know the story, maybe you don't, and maybe it's true, or maybe it isn't. But supposedly, when he was very, very very young, he loved his grandfather, and when his grandfather died, his parents didn't tell him about it, and that led him to this idea of being able to fool people. Do you know anything about this story? Does that sound familiar?
No, I don't. I know he used to wear a "I Love Grandma" T-shirt.
Mm-hmm. Right, I remember that. Yeah,
but a sweatshirt rather.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I never heard that story. But Andy first went to a psychiatrist at the age of 4. So anything is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend, one of the F Troop guys, who Andy gave his, one of the psychiatrists written evaluation to, and basically said, this kid is hopeless. He's never even going to get out of the 6th grade.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was like one of those, kind of things. But I don't know that story.
We don't even know if it's true. What was it like being on a big film set like that, aside from dropping your baton?
Well, it was interesting, because I never been on a Class A Hollywood film, like little small films and shit like that. But it was very interesting, and the push and pull between Jim Carrey and Bob Zamuda and Danny DeVito and Milos was interesting, to say the least. Zamuda and Carrey completely bonded because Carrey wanted to be Andy, as a method actor, or whatever. But it seemed, it was just, it's an interesting. I really respect actors, because it's really hard to, for me, I'm a musician. You play a song, you can do it again and again, but you got to get it in the first take or two, like when you're recording or doing a video, or like when I do these streaming videos, you got to get it on the first take, because there is no second take, but they would be able to do 4, 5, 6 takes. And usually, if they were doing that many takes, they were looking to get it on the next take. And I just thought it was amazing that they could, you'd be ibida, then it would break and everybody's talking in their normal voice, and then you go, okay, action. And they're all back to being, these characters. Is something, that not easy to do for human beings. dogs might be able to do. No, kidding.
On you mentioned Robin Williams, and he was obviously sitting on stage the whole Carnegie Hall gig. Was he? What was he like to hang around?
Robin Williams was a great guy, but just totally, one of the funniest guys, just naturally, who ever lived. But he loved Andy. And here's an interesting story. We were about to go on at Carnegie Hall. It's like, 2 minutes standing in the wings. And Robin was sitting, he was grandma. He was dressed in a pink dress, wig, and he was sitting in a chair just at the back of the stage. And I'm standing next to Andy, and your heart's beating fast. And it's Carnegie fucking Hall. There used to be an old joke that would say, excuse me, how do I get to this, a visitor to New York, a tourist stops a cab and says, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And he says, practice. So, Carnegie, anyway, we're standing there, and, this is his show, his big deal. You would just think he'd be like going with the nerves, but he noticed that Robin didn't have any gloves on, and grandma had very hairy hands. So he says to me, like 2 minutes before we go on stage, he says, Greg, I have to ask you a favor. I need your gloves, conductor's gloves, because the conductor always wore white gloves, right? Because grandma's hands are hairy, And it's like, to me, that was amazing, because the average comic is not looking around and making sure everything is in place. He's like thinking about what he's going to say, what he's going to do. I mean, because of Andy, I worked with Rodney Dangerfield, and he had a whole different way of coming on stage, getting ready a minute before, and was just so of course we gave grandma the gloves, and she was very happy, and so is Andy. I'm trying to get rid of this fucking phone call. There we go. All right. So but Robin Williams was great, and at that live wake, he was. We spent a lot of time together, and he was as upset as I was, But we tried to keep a happy face on him, and his manager's going and put his hands on my shoulder. We're all sitting at a table. He said, they've been best friends since they were 9 years old. And he kept saying that. He was, everybody was sort of full of angst and dread. But Robin, I spoke to him a lot about, Andy, and we're saying, well, he's going to be okay. He said, no, he's not. That's why we're here, So, and Robin unfortunately died a couple of years later. So, but he was a very funny man, and he loved Andy Kaufman. He just, just loved him, and so do I.
So, obviously, Andy was known for his Elvis impersonation, but you actually were an opening act for Elvis once.
Yeah, that's right. In 1976, on New Year's, I was in a band called Pat Upton and Freedom that Colonel Parker decided. Pat Upton was this great singer who, there was an old single by Spiral Staircase called I Will Love You More. That was
Today Than Yesterday, yeah.
He had this ungodly high voice where even Smokey Robinson would be singing in falsetto. He was just like full voice. So anyway, we opened for Elvis at one of, and it was Pontiac Silverdome. And it was not a good show. He was so fat and doped out that he actually split his pants at one point. And the young Elvis would have made a joke about it, and whatever, maybe shown show off a little. But Elvis just went, I don't know what to do. It's my biggest indoor show ever, and I split my pants. So, and then he had all these background singers. He had 13 background singers, the Jordanaires, I forget the name of it.
Was it the
J.D.
Street Inspiration?
and the Stamps or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And some other guys who just would sing Elvis's note, you know, and the mixer would cut to them rather than him on the high notes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he had them, J.D. Sutton and the Stamps are going to sing Now you know, This World Is Not My Home, or something like that. A very depressing gospel song. And then he came back out in a black jumpsuit. He was wearing his white jumpsuit at first. And after this show, you know, I used to play with Emmylou Harris's hot band at the Palomino when just, you know, to jam. And I would take Emmylou's place and, you know, be one of the singers. And Glendy Harden, who had played with Elvis, was the keyboard player in the hot band. And he's quite a raconteur. So after the show, we were talking about it, he said, yeah, you know, we all quit after that show because it wasn't because we wanted to quit Elvis, but we wanted to show him how concerned we were with, you know, how fucked up he was, you know, because, you know, at that point he was a full-on, you know, whatever he was doing a lot of it. And I found that interesting because I just was heartbroken watching him. You know, I had like a all areas pass and I went everywhere. And then I stood behind Parker for a while, you know, and I just, my theory is if David Geffen had been alive, had been a manager then,
right,
Elvis's career would have gone a completely different way because Parker didn't get Elvis. He just didn't. At one point, you know, it was, my heart was breaking. And then at midnight, they put it's the Silver Dome, right? It's a football stadium right outside of Detroit. They put up the American flag in lights, you know, and Elvis gets down on one knee, gives the double peace sign, and goes, I pledge allegiance to the, you know, and Parker's going, yeah, I taught him that. That's my little monkey up there. You know, he didn't get,
right,
he didn't know who he really had,
right,
you know. You know, so anyway, but yeah, it was a very interesting show. One of my other idols. I got to play with a lot of my idols, so I've been lucky. You know?
Yeah, and as we kind of hinted at, you know, Andy and Bob Dylan are very similar in a lot of ways, groundbreakers. They stick to what they believe in. They're not above putting on their audience or alienating them or challenging them. And
challenging, I would say challenging. Yeah. That's a very good term. You know, I mean, I was watching this thing yesterday. I have this record of Bob and the band playing like when he first went electric, mm-hmm. You know, and people are booing. I mean, they're hearing this shit that changed music, that, you know, the Beatles were influenced by, blah, blah, blah. Everybody in the world was influenced by, especially when he went electric. And people are booing, and they did this incredible version of Like a Rolling Stone at the end of the show. And he's said, play it fucking loud, you know. And, you know, I watched a video of it yesterday, and it's, you know, it's just amazing that, you know, now he's 80 years old and the whole world loves Bob, and, you know, he's who he is, you know. And but at that, you know, it's just so amazing to think that. But he, you know, it wasn't like he went back to doing Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, you know. So, you know, he knew what he was doing. I mean, Levon Helm quit the music business after touring with Bob and was working on an oil rig in southern Louisiana when they put the band back together. You know, and they had to go down there and find it. So that's, you know, I mean, for Bob, I mean, for Levon, playing drums in the back is like, well, okay, you know, when you're used to playing with people, you go, well, you know, well, the audience wasn't that good tonight, you know, but that's his problem, not my fucking problem. I'm playing the drums, you know. But Bob didn't consider it his problem. He considered it the audience's problem, you know. So And Andy was the same way. I mean, Andy would do stuff that just wasn't really funny. I mean, he would read The Great Gatsby to an audience, and he'd say, okay, now be good. This is going to take a while. Just be good, and there'll be a surprise at the end, just shit like that. Or do Tony Clifton, who wasn't a good singer and wasn't funny, and, insulted people. That was his deal. He was like just insulting lounge wizard, and people hated Clifton. They just did, and he loved that. He just loved it. Most comics are, very insecure. I mean, it takes a lot to get on stage by yourself and try to make people laugh. It takes years of practicing, and it just takes balls. But Andy's balls were bigger than any comic I ever met, because he was willing to not have them laugh, and not know who he was. His whole act, I could describe his whole act. To me, it was just absolute genius. I was so proud of him, because, I truly loved him. So, to see him succeed, and he was, I really thought, how the fuck is, when I was seeing him at like the Improv, or, how is he going to make it in show business? But, when I was moving out of New York, I remember the last time that all 5 people in F Troop were together, and it was like, I was going to LA. I was going to be a musician. My cousin was going to be an actor. Gil was going to do this. Doug was a writer, and Andy was driving a cab for the only Black cab company in Great Neck, New York, a completely Jewish community. And he said, what the fuck is going to happen to Andy? I mean, what's he going to do? He's so crazy, I mean, Andy was like the kid who, like, when we played softball at recess, he'd be like in right field and, talking to himself, and the ball would go out there. He wouldn't even notice, he had his back turned to the action. And so, the fact that he climbed that mountain is, really something.
Legend. So let's change gears a little bit. So you were in Lone Justice, the later part of the career. I saw you two at the Fleet Center in Boston when Lone Justice was the opening act. You were in the band at the time?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So so what was it like touring, like, doing that tour with you two?
Well, we toured with U2 when they were really like starting to become giant. So that was a very interesting thing to watch. But, I like U2. I had a couple of U2 records, but I thought Bono was like a real force. I first played with Bono the last day of the Dylan tour at Slane Castle.
All right.
And talk about balls, where, like Van Morrison had come on and done It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. And, so Eric Clapton was playing with us, or all these guys. And the last song of the show turned out to be Blowing in the Wind. And we didn't usually, Bob would call a lot of songs and just expect you to know the song. Because I think we had played Blowing in the Wind, twice and so we're doing this, and, Van goes up and sings like one of Bob's verses, and Bob's singing his verses. And then Bono, who'd been staying with Lord Slane, it was at Slane Castle, this great outdoor gig, and you see the castle up on the hill and the stage is down the hill. Anyway, Bono gets up there, he's in his black top hat and starts marching up and down, making up his own words to Blowing in the Wind. And he won't get the fuck off the stage. He won't stop. Eventually, Bob just dropped his guitar, walked off stage. Then Mick Taylor did the same thing. And I'm going, Mac, Colin, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to keep playing with this maniac or not? So, but, and then Bob said on the bus, he said, ooh, that Bono blew me away. with a big smile on his face, but I don't think he was that happy about
Right.
it. But yeah, playing with U2 was very interesting. I still, I mean, a friend of mine told me what they're all worth now. And I've got to say that The Edge, though he has a very original sound, is probably the luckiest man in show business who ever lived, because he's worth about $100 million. And one day he stepped on a pedal and went, ooh, I don't have to go up and down. I can just go down and it'll go, blah, 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 blah. So that was U2's sound. I mean, Bono was a brilliant songwriter, but the actual sound of the band, they're all multi-millionaires, and it really could have been anybody. I mean, I like The Edge. I think, like I said, I have total respect for U2, but that struck me as the truth. But they were good. But Lone Justice was a cautionary tale, because that was a band that was headed in a very interesting direction. They crossed between country music and punk and rock and roll. And Jimmy Iovine, just like Colonel Parker, didn't get it. Even though he was the manager and everything and the producer and blah, 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 he tried to turn her,
Maria.
Maria, who he thought the whole band was Maria, which it really wasn't. And, it was Ryan Hedgecock's concept. And Don Heffington was a great drummer. Tony Gilkyson, who went on to play with X, was a great guitar player. And Jimmy wanted him out because they were with the old concept. He tried to turn her into a new Patti Smith, and he couldn't get Bruce to write her a song. So he got Little Steven, and, fired everybody over the court. He didn't fire me, but he fired Gilkyson, he fired Don Heffington with the, and going, it was unreasonable because these guys are great players and could, but he go, oh, well, Don's an alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I like Jimmy. I have total respect for Jimmy. Jimmy helped me out in my career, but I just thought that what happened to Lone Justice is something that, shouldn't have happened. If they had gone on and done, just continued their idea, it would have been the world's first rhythm and Western band, and to me, I mean, that's sort of my my bag, rhythm, whether the cross between rhythm and blues and country music and the blues, it's a natural Americana thing. But it didn't happen. So, and also the thing was, there was so much attention paid to Lone Justice that people would say, well, this girl is an artist. And she went, holy shit, they think I'm an artist. I better I better come up with something fast, So, but she's a wonderful singer, and everybody's crazy. I mean, I'm crazy. She's crazy. Everybody has their own little quirks. So, but it was a cautionary tale. It really shouldn't have gone down the way it went down, And so.
All right. You mentioned you got us back on the '84 tour a moment ago. So I wanted to point out. So on the hopefully you can see this on the. You're credited here somewhere. Hopefully you can see it. I can't really see what I'm saying there. And you're credited on the live album,
Real Live.
Real Live there.
Right, there I am.
Yep. And in both cases,
that's what I used to look like.
So
that's what we all used to look like.
And they spell your name with one G every time, and you spell your name with two G. So I wanted to correct this lone injustice and and let everyone know, because when I was looking things up, it was kind of difficult when I was first saw the the artwork on the album, then researching you. So so it's Gregg with two G's. Let's get that straight right away.
That's right. Let's get that straight right away.
So as I said, the real live album, I think when it came out, it was right before CDs really took off. It was a single album with 10 songs. Sony, or it was probably before Sony, Columbia, CBS, whoever put it out. They just kind of put it out without a lot of fanfare. It did, it sounds great, but it's 10 songs. The most shows were more than 20 songs, and that opening Highway 61, and you had Mick Taylor on that, Chuck Berry riffs, and it's just a great album. It's like a precursor to the Never Ending Tour in a lot of ways. It's an extension of what he did on Letterman with the Plugs. And I agree with you. I think it's something that really needs to be revisited and expanded, and maybe they'll do that part of the bootleg series. But I just want to know what you think of it.
I think it's a great album. I think it's the last great band that Bob ever really had. He had great bands, and he still has guys who can really play. But this was at our best. We were like, even like when we played at Wembley, Pete Townsend said it was like listening to Bob with the Rolling Stones. And how much better does it get than that?
Right.
And you're right. I mean, we would always come out with Highway 61. It was always the first song. And the only time I was ever really proudest to be an American was standing on an English stage or a French stage or whatever, playing Highway 61 and going, this is the shit, and this is from America. I mean, these may all be Englishmen aside from Bob, but I'm an American and this is my boy. So, but yeah, I love that album. I mean, there's actually like, I've heard like seen bootleg videos and heard them from that tour where there are like actually better cuts, better versions. But I guess, Glyn Johns was brought on in the last week. So it's like, and it took them a while to get, I guess they recorded 4 nights or something like that. That was a great thing too. I mean, getting to work with Glyn Johns and, all these guys would reminisce about the Rolling Stones and about Ian. They'd all do Ian Stewart imitations for some reason, so it was very funny. But, Glyn Johns, one of these guys who, I really never thought I would meet or work with, so, but that album is underrated. And I have some other friends who are on other cuts of Springtime in New York. And one guy was going, there was a review saying that if this band had gone out with Bob instead of the Mick Taylor band, things would have been different. I go, what? This is like one of, that was a great band. And, it's undeniably great songs, and the people in Europe loved it. But maybe maybe it just wasn't hyped right. Because if it'd gotten half the hype that Springtime in New York is getting, we're talking a different story. But, maybe it sounded too much like the Rolling Stones, but I don't think so.
No. Actually sounds better than when he did play with the Rolling Stones. I don't know if you ever heard that.
It does. You're right. Too many egos, we were all, that I thought that was a great band. Like I said, the best band I ever played,
So how'd you get the gig?
I got it because Chalo Quintana was playing drums with him from the Plugs. And Chalo said, Bob's looking for a bass player. And I came out and auditioned, and they called me back. And, eventually I just got the gig. And I even, once we were on tour, I was kind of close with Bob for a little while. And I go, Bob, why me? Could other name bass players were also like trying to get the gig. And he said, well, I just liked your sound, and the fact that I didn't really notice you, just, because usually you notice the bass when it's doing something fancy or when it's wrong. Right. That's the rest of the time. It's just like, I'm trying to play what he wants, just along with his rhythm guitar, basically, I have a different approach. I don't try to be fancy because I can't. So, so anyway, that's how I got the gig. It was, it was a great gig, and, the Petty Band followed us. And that was maybe the last really great band that he had, because the Petty Band, and Tom Petty himself wanted to be Bob more than Bob wanted to be Bob. Right? I mean, he really did. I love Tom Petty, but
right.
And that's one of the things I loved about him, was that Bob streak in him. So that's how I got the gig. Yeah, that was something.
And so obviously, big Tyler fan, but you actually saw the Stones back in '64, back in the Brian Jones.
I saw the Stones. I saw the Stones at the Academy of Music, which was later the Palladium. It was the first rock and roll show I ever went to, and Stone shows in those days would never complete. After 6 or 7 songs, there'd always be a riot, and I was walking by one day. I walked in, it was a Sunday afternoon. They were doing 2 shows. I caught the early show, and sure enough, they came out with, I think I'm a King Bee or something like that.
Yeah.
And after 6 or 7 songs, all the little girls just rushed the stage. They didn't have security in those days like they have now. So a complete riot broke out. You could smell female hormones all over the place, and people were like shouting communist slogans, just going nuts. It was like, this is for me. This is the shit right here. I never forgot that. And then I got to see the Stones in '69 at the Forum, and I saw them in '72 twice. Mm-hmm. And I have no interest in seeing the Stones today, because I saw that was their absolute peak. 1972 Exiles in Main Street tour. Yeah. It was just amazing. And I saw them at the Palladium in LA, which is a big, it's got this huge dance floor, and the stage is kind of low. You could walk up. I walked up to the stage 5 feet away from Jagger, and you could just stand there, and there was no security or anything. And eventually I had to move back because, I expected Jagger to relate to the audience in front of him, but he was making the grand gestures. So I said, oh, I'll move back 50 feet. It'll be better. But I love the Rolling Stones,
So on the '84 tour, about a third of the way each night, you sang the Jerry Goffin, Barry Goldberg composition, I've Got to Use My Imagination, not to be confused with the Temptations.
Just my imagination. Which Bob would always say, and now Gregg Sutton's going to sing Just My Imagination.
Which is the Stones also did. But anyway.
The Stones did that, yeah.
But this is the Last Night in the Pips had a hit with it. It was also it's on this Gary Goldberg album, which was co-produced by Bob Dylan. And
it was also on an album by a group called The Coup, which was me and Barry and some other guys, and it was our single, even though nothing happened with it, and that's why I was doing it. Bob, before we walked on stage at the first show, Bob said, "Oh, by the way, I hear you sing, so why don't you do something before I do the acoustic part of the set, because I need a little break, and can't have the audience just waiting for me." So I said, "Okay, this is literally 10 minutes before the show." And I go, "Well, Mick, what should we do?" He says, "Anything you want, as long as it's in the key of G." So at first I just did, let's do I Got My Mojo Working, and that was it was okay. I mean, Mick Taylor was great on it, but it wasn't, but so then I remembered that, I used to do Imagination in A minor. So I just said, well, we'll drop it to G and do this. And that band was so good. We never rehearsed it. It just was, we made up our own version as we went along, and it was great from the very first time. So, but it surprised me how loose Bob was in that way, because it's like, 10 minutes before you walk on, you say, hey, I hear you sing something. Go ahead. I have a recorded version from Wembley where Bob and I were joking about some girl who was like standing at the side of the stage who was just gorgeous. And he introduces me, and I said something to him right before, and he starts laughing. He just can't stop laughing. And it's a good version of it. And the intro is worth the price of admission, just to hear Bob laugh for 30 seconds uncontrollably. Gregg Sutton, Gregg Sutton, well, here he is.
And both of you have a relationship with Barry Goldberg. Of course, she was there when Dylan went electric, but you've also were in a band, KGB, with Carmen Appice or Carmen Appice. I forget which one. One of the two brothers. The two brothers give different pronunciations. But anyway, so what can you tell me about him?
About Barry?
Yeah.
Barry's is a sweet guy, a total mensch, great keyboard player, great songwriter. Just a great songwriter, a total natural. And I think he has a movie that just came out with the Butterfield Blues Band and his best friend, Michael Bloomfield, who was, the original electric guitar player on Highway 61, and just a great charismatic blues player from Chicago. They grew up together. I don't know what the name of the movie is, but it's out now. It just came out. To great reviews. But Barry's just a really sweet guy. And when I met him, KGB was another cautionary tale. Didn't really work out well. But at the time, Barry was I guess he had cleaned up from a long habit and was germphobic. So the road manager would go, okay, let's get off the bus. The gig's to the right. Don't touch Barry, and get in there. You're on. And we were opening for Joe Cocker, who, was just, he had stuff playing with him, and he was just great. And it turned out that he wound up doing 6 of my songs over the course of his career. So it's funny how coincidence isn't always coincidence, or coincidence leads somewhere else, because my life was flashing in front of me, but the future life, and I didn't really know it, because it was, the whole coup thing was later on, 83 or 84. But that Carmine is a great drummer. Barry is a great keyboard player. Michael Bloomfield was supposed to be the guitar player. The day I got the gig, he was the guitar player on the first record, right? That's why it was KGB. Ray Kennedy was the lead singer, Goldberg and Bloomfield. So I go down to audition, and they give me the gig on a Friday. That Sunday, in the LA Times, not Charles Champlin, but I forget who anyways, Michael Bloomfield says, "Don't buy this album." I said, Jesus Christ, I just got the gig, and they replaced him with another guitar player who wasn't really on his level, so it was I really, I love Michael Bloomfield. I used to go see the Electric Flag. I saw their very first gig at Monterey, and I just thought they were a great band, great R&B band. Buddy Miles singing and Michael playing, just all these great players. He was a truly charismatic guitar. Anyway, I didn't get to play with him because he quit. So, but it was great. That was my first really sort of big time gig, and it was great watching Cocker every night. I would make a point of watching Joe because he was just. It was right after the Mad Dogs and Englishmen thing. He was still at his peak. And here's a funny story. And Joe's passed on, so he won't mind me saying this. The guys in Stuff would bet on anything. I see them betting. It was Richard T. and Gordon Edwards and Steve Gadd and Eric Gale and Cornell Dupree. It was like an all-star session.
Mhm.
They were just soulful, and they'd bet on like which cockroach would get up the wall in the dressing room first, right? So at the time, Joe was like drinking and doing smack, I think, and they would set up 4 pails, one stage right up, one stage left right up, one stage left down, one stage right down, and they were there so that Joe could throw up, and not throw up on the audience, in between, while somebody was taking a solo or something, so, and they would bet on which pail Joe would puke in first. and then next, I see them like, putting their money on the piano. It's like just incredible. But Joe was great. And KGB, it never really happened, but it led to my association with Elliot Roberts, and he set me up with a deal on Arista and dealing with Clive Davis, and then a deal on Columbia. So it led to good things for me,
So how did you even, so for the, getting back to this.
Yeah.
So how did you even hear that that there's going to be a track on there that you were on?
I heard about it from my friend Chris Morris, who's a music critic.
Oh yeah.
And I was surprised because I had completely forgotten about the song Enough Is Enough. It's sort of based on Robert Johnson's Me and the Devil, but it's up tempo. But the chords are Robert Johnson chords, but it's great to be on a Bob record, and I've heard some great cuts off there. Enough Is Enough is great. Mick Taylor's great on it. The band is cooking. But I heard the other day, I don't have the record, but I heard this great version of Hurricane that I think is from that record.
It wouldn't be from there. It's a different era, but
oh, really?
With the Rolling Thunder box, maybe.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Well, okay, never mind. Never mind. Emily Litella.
Well, that was a good version too, probably the Hurricane. Yeah. This cover is 80 to 85. This is like their 80s. Around the time you were on tour.
Right.
So, what was it like being on tour in Europe in 1984? Like, what were the accommodations like? How'd you get around?
Oh, it was totally first class. I mean, it was just, it was great. And, Bob really took a liking to me. So he'd like, say, hey, Greg, don't get on the bus. Come in my limo, blah, blah, blah. And, we traded jackets like girlfriends, He gave me his motorcycle jacket and I gave him my white leather jacket, blah, blah, blah. It was great. I mean, getting all this money to do something I would pay to do now, or I would have paid to do then, and, the accommodation, we're always, Bob would stay in slightly better hotels. Like in Paris, I noticed he was staying at the George V. I went to visit him in his room and it was like, bigger than all 4 rooms the rest of us had, but it was first class. And, they were giving us all this per diem and all this money, and, high class drug dealers would show up and beautiful women everywhere. It was great. It was just great. And, I can't think, I can think of some things that could have been greater, but, I'm not going to say them.
And what were rehearsals like, and where were they done?
Rehearsals were out at Bob's place in Point Dume. He has this beautiful, very big property north of Malibu. And we would rehearse in the guest house. which was like, anybody else's dream house, but it was, it was just the guest house. And I remember the first time I went out there, I knocked on the door and Bob answered the door, which surprised, I was expecting,
butler or something.
Yeah, exactly, the manservant. And we were dressed in exactly the same thing. He was wearing, we were both wearing like little gray sort of imitation motorcycle jackets. He probably got it at Nana, just like I did, which was a store in Santa Monica, motorcycle boots and black jeans. And we sort of looked each other up and down. It was like a Marx Brothers routine. and then we shook hands, and Bob has one of those, you may touch me kind of, he doesn't really grasp your hand. So, it's like meeting the Queen or something,
right.
I'm sure he's had to shake 4 million hands in his life. And,
plus they're very delicate too. So probably got
very delicate.
Yes,
yeah, very delicate, beautiful hands. And, it was interesting. And, Mick Taylor was there, and Chalo was there the first day. The next time I went out, which was about a week later, Mick had replaced Chalo and the keyboard player with Mac and Colin. So it was a different group the next time I went out. And there's some others. Rehearsals were great though. It was just, and he's so loose. He said, okay, we're going to do this. We do Joker Man and, Highway 61 and stuff like that. But, he would just go, oh, what about this one? And we play it once, like Blowing in the Wind or The Times They Are Changing, or, any of those songs that everybody should know, and it was good.
So, and when you're on tour, what was a typical day like? I mean, you're going from
a
country to
typical
country
day,
and so on.
Most of the times we'd we'd do the tour, we'd do the gig. And most of these gigs were, I don't know, the stadium gigs were in the daytime, but they'd go into the night, we'd always do like a close to 3-hour set. So, and then, we go out and stay up all night long or drink, or occasionally we'd have to fly to the next gig, overnight. And then, the day would start like around 2:00 the next day. But for me, I had never been to Europe before, and I just, when I'm in that kind of frame of mind, I just can't sleep late for some reason. So I was like the only guy. I do my sightseeing in the mornings when I knew nobody else was awake. I'd go around these cities and get a taste of Europe. But we get on the bus at about I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and get to the gig and wait for Santana to finish. And he's a very nice guy, also great guitar player, Carlos Santana. And then do the show. And, it'd be like 6:00 in the evening, and Bob would go, hey, I'm just waking up. Let's go. So, it was good. It was very smooth. Everything was, there was never any problems at all. Everything was set up for us, it was, and always sounded great. There were 1 or 2 of the first 2 gigs, we didn't really have our sea legs together. And I remember we were on this Vickers Viscount, which is this, a DC-3, safest plane in the world. It's never been a crash of a DC-3. And there were these 2 Dutch journalists, music journalists, and they hadn't really been impressed by the first show, which I think might have been in Amsterdam, or I don't really remember where it was. And we were talking about Bob, and I sort of said, during the tour, the band would say, Gregg, you're not really a fan, are you? I mean, these are, English guys. And I said, guilty, So I said to this guy, I don't remember, him and his girlfriend were the journalists. I said, well, you're not really like big Dylan fans, right? And they said to me, I think Bob Dylan's in a very unfortunate place as a human being, because people think he knows things that maybe he does, but, you know, who knows? You know, they think he knows everything, you know. And I never forgot that, because, you know, I mean, now that he's 80 and, you know, Bob Dylan, you know, it's okay. But, you know, he was in his 40s then.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's it, you know, there's a lot of truth to that. You know, people think that they think funny things about stars, you know. So, you know, but with Bob, it's all true.
Do you remember, you mentioned what Bono was doing, but any other particular onstage surprises, aside from saying you're going to do a song, you know, you're going to do...
Well, he would just have these guys come up and jam, and he, you know, it didn't really matter to him. I remember we did The Times They Are Changing once, when Chrissie Hynde, Eric Clapton, Carlos, and Van Morrison came on stage. And we had never played that song before, you know, and unfortunately, Chrissie Hynde played a harmonica solo, which, you know, and sang a verse. I love Chrissie, I love the Pretenders, but, you know, she didn't really seem to, she was there to be seen, you know, in my opinion. I could be wrong about that. But you know, it's just interesting how loose he was. He'd just go, oh, let's do this one. You know, probably Clapton, who's like maybe the nicest guy in the world. I remember, anyway, maybe Clapton said, Bob, why don't we do The Times They Are Changing? And you go, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that, you know, like that. But Clapton, you know, after the first time he came on and played, I don't remember where it was, like on our way off the stage, he put my hand on my shoulder. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, this must be such a lovely gig for you, Greg. I'm so happy for you. And he didn't know me from, you know, jack shit. It was just, it was such a nice thing to say. And I said, are you kidding? This is like the dream gig of a lifetime, you know, especially since you showed up, you know, it's, you know, so, yeah. Bob was just very loose, you know. I'm sure he still is, you know. He has this live approach to music, old-fashioned approach, you know. It's not like, no, it's got to go like this. I never see him. He never like ever did anything but just play the songs, you know. And he never criticized anybody or say you got to do this, you got to do that. You just go out and do it. And, you know, which is, for me, I think that's the way to do it. You know, I learned a lot from Bob, you know, in that way. It's just, you know, you hire musicians who are the shit for you and let them do their thing, you know. And I'm Bob Dylan, so you should know these songs, you know, so I'm just assuming you do, you know. I mean, every once in a while, I would like have to like make it real, like it was obvious to me that either Mac or Mick didn't really know the song. Like the first time we played Just Like a Woman was in Berlin, I think. And it was like, first of all, Bob started playing it. He didn't even announce it. And, you know, we sort of, oh, it's Just Like a Woman. You know, he did like a harmonica guitar intro, but I had to make it real clear where we were going because, you know, we had never played it before. And I think I was the only one who really knew the song. You know, Mac picked it up pretty fast, but Bob would do shit like that. And, you know, it actually was a great version, you know. But, you know, I mean, everybody should, if you're a musician, you should know how to play Just Like a Woman. You know, a rock and roll musician.
Right.
Classical, not so much, you know.
And then when the tour was over, you hung out with Mick Taylor for a while?
Yeah, my late wife came over, and she had never been to England either, or to Europe. So we spent a lot of time in England and went out to visit Mick in Devon, which is where he had a home. I think he now lives in the Netherlands. I'm sure he does. And he and I were talking about putting a band together, but it never happened. Mick, like so many great guitar players, if he doesn't have a gig or a recording, he just never touches a guitar, which to me is like incredible, because if I don't play the guitar like at least every few days, not only do I feel funny, but the next time I try to play the guitar, my hands don't really work, but some people are, just Mick Taylor, I think, was like, one of these born guitar players, like Carlos, like all these guys who show up at 17, Jimmy Page, fully formed geniuses, at the guitar. It's like, I'm just not one of those guys. So I have to continue to apply myself, Plus, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't do that, just sit around smoking cigarettes.
And you bumped into Dylan a couple of times after that tour?
Yeah, the last time, well, not the last time, but he came to see Lone Justice, but really he was there to see Graffiti Man, which was this group, John Trudell, who's an Indian poet, and Jesse Ed Davis, who was like one of the great blues guitar players who ever lived, played with Taj Mahal. They were in the group, and he's hanging out in their dressing room. And his girlfriend, Carol Childs, who worked for Geffen Records, so was connected with Lone Justice through Geffen, said, you got to come in and say hi to Bob. So, we talked for a little while, and I think I've seen him once since then, just ran into him and just, hi, how you doing? Gave me the old, but yeah, I have a bunch of friends who just played with him on a new album that's going to come out after Springtime in New York. Don Was and Ira Ingber, and this guy, Doug Lacey. They're all sort of pals of mine. And some of them played on Rough and Rowdy Ways, I think, which is, I think, a pretty good album. I mean, Murder Most Foul is one of the greatest songs Bob ever wrote. And to me, the only true account of the Kennedy assassination from, it brings back that day so vividly. And those 3 days, the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, when they shot when Jack Ruby shot Oswald, but I mean, down to right before he was murdered, the mayor of Dallas said, "Don't say Dallas don't love you, Mr. President." And that's one of the lines, but to me, it's just like a great song. And, pretty interesting album.
And I don't know if this is in your era or not, but it was Lone Justice did an unreleased Bob Dylan song called
Go Away Little Girl.
Do you know anything about those sessions, and were you part of? I don't think you're part of them, were you?
Well, I wasn't part of them. Ryan was part of them, but knowing Bob as I do, the song was originally called Go Away Little Girl. Mm-hmm. And I think he wrote it for Maria, to Maria. I don't really need this shit, so I'll just, here, 10 minutes, go away, little girl. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but that's my theory. Yeah, well, knowing both principals who are involved, I would say that might be what happened.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person to try to interpret a Bob Dylan song.
No, that's for sure. The whole world is doing it. I hear that Bob is taking boxing lessons now. He 80 years old. He took up boxing at 78. So he's like probably going to live to be about 120. at this point. So, you know, we'll still be interpreting Bob Dylan songs when, you know, whenever.
And then your career took an interesting turn when you became a very successful songwriter. And how'd that come about?
Yeah, that was basically Jimmy Iovine had an office on the A&M Law, and you know, he put me together with Lance Freed, Alan Freed's son, who ran Rondor and Alamo Irving Publishing, and they dug me. Lance and I had a instant connection, and they gave me a little office there at A&M, and for several years I just, you know, got very lucky with songs and covers. And you know, I was writing pop songs, but it was more like I mean, there's a lot of R&B artists that, you know, old, like Percy Sledge, Carla Thomas, Al Green, those kind of guys, Cocker, who I always considered the R&B artist. You know, he's like the reincarnation of Ray Charles, basically. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the only guy who ever did Ray Charles, mm-hmm. almost as good as Ray Charles, you know, and more hard edge. So, you know, I did well with those, and Curtis, you know, and Sam Brown, and all those people. I did really well in England and Europe, and you know, that was great. And eventually, we parted ways. But you know, Iovine set that up, and that was right before he founded it. You know, I forget the name of his Interscope.
Interscope, yeah.
Yeah, and became, you know, the billionaire he is today. Jimmy, I got to say, Jimmy is, whoa. Oh, I see. I'm declining this call. There you are. You know, nobody ever calls me unless I'm talking to somebody, doing an interview.
Right now, there's a leaf growing outside my window. I hope you can't hear it, because, you know, when does that ever happen, you know? But yeah. Anyway, so
Jimmy, that's how that happened, you know.
So just to for those people who don't know, so in 1998 there was a song called "Stop," which you co-wrote, which was a hit for Sam Brown.
Yeah.
There's 1992 Curtis Stigers. You teamed up with him for "You're All That Matters to Me," which was you know, one of his biggest hits. Tom Jones recorded "It Takes More Than Memories." It was written with Carla Thomas, right?
Yeah.
Joe Cocker covered a bunch of your songs, like "A Night Too Cool." Yeah, so it was, you know, it was quite. But before that, did you ever particularly try to write any songs?
Oh, I'd always written songs. You know, I mean, I'd been not for other people, basically for myself. I mean, you know, in the 70s, I had a deal with Arista. It was like a group called the Pets. It was all my songs, the CBS record. When I was 8 years old, me and my cousin used to steal cigarettes from our parents, go out in the back and write dirty songs. You know, what 8-year-olds considered to be dirty songs.
Right.
We get high on the tobacco and go, oh, you know. So I've been doing it like for a while, but you know, for some reason I've always written songs, you know. I think I started like really writing. The first guy I ever worked with was a guy named Dave Hassinger, who produced Aftermath. And he used to have a studio called the Sound Factory, like at Cahuenga and Selma, just north of Sunset Boulevard. And back, I think that was like 1971. And I wrote a couple of songs for that. I mean, he had heard us and liked some of these songs I wrote. So I've been doing it my whole life, you know, for better or worse. I mean, occasionally, but you know, I just, and I still do it, even though there's really like my style of writing. I don't know. It's sort of gone. I feel when I was a kid, I used to go see like Mississippi John Hurt and Lightning Hopkins and guys like that, who were like rediscovery from the blues. You know, I sort of feel like one of them now. I'm sort of like gone, my musical approach may be obsolete compared to the weekend. You know what I mean? So, but I still do it because I need to express myself, you know. And you know, it's not the money, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's the rainbow.
So I just want to, before I let you go, a couple of other things I want to touch on quickly. So you, there's the 1981 hit Tommy Two-Tone 867-5309 Jenny, which you knew when to join that band.
I know. I kept telling them it's funny because you know, I joined that band and then that single took off, and I used to always tell them, "See, you guys were nothing before I joined." You know, but yeah, that was, you know, that was an interesting experience. I guess that was, yeah, that was good. It was good it was a lot of fun. Girls really loved the Two-Tone group. So that was the first time I was ever exposed to, like, I wouldn't call them groupies, but, you know, the availability of females, you know, became very apparent to me, especially in Texas. They love Two-Tone in Texas. We did a tour of Texas with ZZ Top, and it was unbelievable. ZZ Top was also coming into their prime then. So, but yeah, the Two-Tone band, but they had internal problems and one-hit wonders, really, you know, even though they were talented people. Jim Keller, especially the guy who wrote 867-5309, is still making records and shit like that. I don't know what happened to Tommy himself, you know, Tommy Heath.
Yeah. And you want to talk about the time you met Al Green?
Yeah, well, that was part of the A&M thing. I was working with my friend Arthur Baker, who was, I guess, what you'd call a dance producer. He was like, you know, early hip hop or whatever, but he was working with Al Green, and Al had recorded a song of mine called Every Time You Cry, which never was released, unfortunately, but they were recording in the big studio at A&M, and I walked in. Arthur invited me to come over, and Al Green just, I mean, I love Al Green. He's one of my other biggest idols, and, you know, he had the greatest smile. He, you know, he said, "Al, this is Gregg Sutton," and he goes, "Every time you cry, shave up all your tears." I couldn't believe it. Al Green is singing my song to me with this big smile on his face. And I told him, "Rev, I'm ready to die right now. You know, Jesus, take me, you know, take this Jew." So he loved that. And, you know, just to hear Al sing a cappella, you know, a song I wrote in this, you know, for a few seconds was worth the price of admission. You know, I wish he had included it on the record, and I wish I had gotten to work with him a little more, but you know, that was great. And working with Carla Thomas was great. She told me all these stories about what had really happened in Memphis, and things I can't really repeat, but she would talk about the Let's Stay Together record and Willie Mitchell and Al Jackson and the whole High Record experience. And she was also, you know, my other idol, Otis Redding. She and Otis were a team, so I would go, "So what was Otis like? You know, blah, blah, blah. And what would Otis do here?" You know, after a while, she'd say, cut it out, you know. And I also got to meet Rufus, her father, you know, walking the dog.
Oh, yeah, yes.
And he was, you know, it was interesting because I saw Carla a certain way. And then when I was out with Carla and Rufus is a type A personality. He just takes over the room. And it was like seeing, like, father and daughter is a different dynamic than, you know, Star. Right. So that was interesting. He was a lot of fun. It was fun to go out with, and they both had just incredible stories, you know. And, you know, and then Tom Jones wound up doing that song as well as Carla. And Tom Jones, one of the most impressive singers. Ivy sent me over to, they were getting this record together, and Tom liked my song, so and he liked me. And what I would do is to basically go over to Tom's house, and we would find the right key for all these songs, right? And I've never seen a guy, we would go from E to E, you know, every key, and even, you know, whatever. And he would sing all these songs in full voice, no matter how high up you went. And then we would sort of go, what do you think? Should it be B flat? You know, and I go, you know, I sort of liked it in A. He said, well, I think B flat's the one, you know, but it was like the most impressive singing. I mean, I've never seen a guy with an unlimited range like that, you know, and he was just such a nice guy. He was like, obviously working class, British, you know, from the north of Britain, and just a humble guy who was, you know, so I expected him to be real jive, like shooby dooby kind of, you know, that kind of thing. But he was just like the most down to earth guy and the most impressive singer I ever, I mean, aside from Al Green and, you know, a couple of others, but, you know, that demonstration of range. And he wasn't trying to show off. He was just trying to find the right key, you know. So that was impressive, you know, and a sweet man, a very sweet man.
Yeah, my sister and I took my mother to see him live a few years ago. Like Delilah is her favorite song, and we used to watch This Is Tom Jones every week. And I used to buy singles when I was a kid. You know, it was a lot of great stuff, and he still sounds great.
He's a dynamo. And he's, you know, women used to throw their panties on the stage at Tom Jones shows. It was the first time it ever happened. Actually, it doesn't happen that much anymore.
And so I hope you don't mind me asking this, but one of the things that I heard in one of your interviews, you talked about Fredo, your wife, and it's, you just said so many nice things. I just wanted, if you wanted to say something about her.
Well, Fredo and me were like two peas in a pod. You know, we were almost looked like twins, and occasionally there were 4 or 5 peas in our pod, but that's a whole other story. But you know, she passed years ago, and now I'm in love with this woman named Catherine James. We've been together about 4 years. Catherine wrote a book called Dandelion, and she was involved with Jackson Browne and Mick Jagger and Jimmy Page, and a beautiful woman, brilliant, great writer. Dandelion is a book worth getting. It's available on Amazon. And I love her, so I'm lucky because I really expected to live out the rest of my life, you know, pretty much alone. So I'm blessed to know her, you know. But Fredo was, you know, a great artist, and was like my, you know, we got married when we were 23, and we went through a lot of changes together, and she was, you know, 39 years, 40 years together. That's, you know, it speaks for itself.
All right, so so you have a book, and which you can get through your Facebook page, and you had a couple of albums you were talking about, which probably can get on Bandcamp or someplace.
Yeah, one's called Deal With It, which was on the Wave label in Britain, you know, and the other one's called No More Lounging Around, which was put out by the same guy who put out my book. So you have to, you know, get in touch with me to obtain that, and you know, they're available. And you know, I do this show called Salvation Sunday almost every Sunday on Facebook with a live band, and you know, if you tune in, you know, you
can watch it live, or you can you can watch it.
That's right. So it's on the page. You don't have to tune in on Sunday itself. Thank you for that.
Yeah, every once in a while, it's like, oh, there's a pop-up alert, and if you know, on Sunday, so right. I'll watch it later. But well, thank you, Gregg. This has been a pleasure. So much great information.
Yeah. So I really appreciate it, Harold. I dig you, man, and It's fun getting to meet you.
Yeah. And all right. Well, I will. This will be up pretty soon. And everyone check out his albums and his book and his Salvation Sunday concerts. And take care.
Thank you, Harold.